Towards the end of last week, we got our first bits of information about the new Football Manager game, FM25. Sports Interactive released an article that detailed some of the changes we can expect to see in the new game, not all of them mind you, as well as some pictures, some glimpses of what the game might look like on the new engine. Now you might have seen some screenshots about what the game might look like on FM25, but there's plenty of information in that article, so today we're going to break it all down and see how it's going to affect the future of Football Manager. You can see I've got the article in front of me here, the development update for FM25, just an early look at some things we might expect, and as you can see, it's a very long article with plenty of information within it, and I imagine most of you won't have taken the time to read every last bit of this. So I'm going to break it all down for you today. We'll have a look if these changes are positive or negative, but I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below, so let me know what you think, and make sure as well, if you do enjoy this video, to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel as well, as we'll be making a video pretty much every time we get some new information about the next FM game. Let's start off with the simplest bit of information we've got here. There is a new logo for Football Manager, a slight tweak, and a new logo for Sports Interactive, the people that make the game. So that doesn't really affect anything, but you know, there it is, there's one bit of info. And also I should note everything we're talking about today, the article states, is about Football Manager on the PC and on console. It's got nothing to do with FM Mobile or FM Touch, which I'll talk more about a little bit down the line, so bear that in mind. There's then a few paragraphs of information just setting up what's to come, and it does reiterate some of the things we learnt last year. If you don't know, when Sports Interactive announced FM24, they did speak a little bit about FM25, jumping a game ahead really, which was quite unusual for them, but they were just letting us know that FM25 was going to be almost a rebirth for the series, almost a sequel I think they called it, to Football Manager. We're going to see a lot of new changes, and it's mainly all down to the movement to the new engine, which is the Unity engine, which as they say will enhance the graphical fidelity of the game, and the development process is going to be made more efficient so that they can make faster tweaks down the line. So that all sounds like positive things. The only negative side to that a lot of people have asked us in the comments, and I believe they mentioned this either in the past article they did last year or it's somewhere in here, where they basically say you might need a bit of a better computer to play Football Manager. I'm sure they'll talk a little bit more about specs down the line, what you'll require to be able to play the game on your PC, but I can't imagine it's going to take too much to be able to play FM. At the base of it, it's still a pretty basic game compared to other games that you might try and run on your PC, so I wouldn't worry too much, but I'm sure we'll get more info about that as time goes on. But back to the article, there is a sentence that I find pretty striking here, where they say FM25 in essence is a starting point for the studio's next 20 years, which is a bold statement, but it definitely bodes well for the future, unless they get FM25 wrong I suppose, but everything we've seen so far, to me, points us that we're going into the right direction. Now I will say there's been a lot of speculation from the FM community that we might be seeing Football Manager go into a live service game. If you don't know, that's a bit like Fortnite or Apex I think, where you have a game outright, you download the game, you buy the game, and from there, instead of it being a new game comes out every year like say FIFA, instead you get an update every now and then which might add a new feature or add a new database of players maybe once a season's finished. But to be honest, as interesting as that might be, I don't want to say cool because I'm not necessarily sure I'd enjoy that, but as interesting as that concept might be, I can't see it going ahead purely on a business perspective from Sports Interactive. I don't know the ins and outs of their finances, but I would imagine that they're going to make more money by selling a copy of the game every single year than selling one copy and then charging, you know, £15 a year for people to update it. And whilst that might be better financially for the consumer, I personally just can't see it happening, so I'm going to presume that will not be the case. But yes, they say it's a starting point for the next 20 years, and then they speak a little bit about the Premier League licenses, which we spoke about previously. They've recently been added to the game. You'll have real club names, real kits, real badges, and real player faces as well for every team in the Premier League, which is a massive get for FM, and it's going to be a cool thing to see in game, and something that almost should be there now for the size of the game that Football Manager has become. There's also a discussion about the brand new user interface, which we'll get to down the line, and also some information about men's and women's team, where they confirm that it's one game, one ecosystem. Basically, when you start a save, you'll be able to be a manager of a women's team and then maybe move across and be a manager of a men's team, or vice versa. And I think that makes sense. I think it's nice as well that it is one ecosystem and not, say, almost a game mode where you choose men's or women's football, because that way you kind of are going to segregate the women's football out of it. Most people will pick the men's football. At least this way, if you're an unemployed manager and a women's team comes up, a job's available, you might end up going there when you didn't initially intend to manage in women's football, which will only add to the experience, I think, of bringing the women's game game into the FM world. Miles, the head of Sports Interactive, then gives us some words about some of the thought processes behind the new game. But at the end of all of that, the important paragraph to us as players is where he informs us that there's going to be some cuts to the game, some things that will be missing in the new Football Manager, either because people weren't using them or only a very small portion of the FM player base was. But he starts all of that with the most controversial of the lot, which has proved to be a big discussion on Twitter recently about touchline shouts, where he announces that they will not be in FM25. If you don't know, in Football Manager, in-game, you can encourage your players, praise your players, but Miles says he's never been happy with them. The way they work is it's only when the ball goes out of play that these shouts actually take action, and you don't know how long the shouts take action for, or really what they're doing to your players. So in that case, yes, I do understand why they are going. And then on Twitter, he's done a very long thread trying to explain it more, basically summing it up, saying that they weren't done right, but also they weren't as influential as people thought they were, really. And whilst this might be a loss to the game, he does say that he wants them to come back, but they'll only reappear when they can do them properly. Now, personally, I don't think this is a terrible change. If they're not happy with touchline shouts and they want to remove them to make them better, then go for it, because at the end of the day, the way they work currently is that the players that do use them, they have their 2 or 3 favourites, me included, demand more praise, encourage, whatever it might be, and we just spam them and hope something changes, when realistically, you know, it doesn't necessarily work like that as a manager. So I don't know what they're going to do with them, but if they think they weren't working great or weren't great in general, then all power to them, go and change it. I don't mind that leaving. They then mention that the social media screen and the data chalkboard are going to be removed. The information from the social media screen will still be in the game, just in different sections, and I don't mind that too much. I don't think many people were going out their way and using the social media screen. And then on top of that, they mention that the chalkboard is being removed, and I'll go as far as saying that I didn't know what the chalkboard was, so I think the fact that that is the case, and like they say, 1% of people actually use a chalkboard since the data hub was introduced, just shows you it is not something that people are using, so feel free to take it out, Sports Interactive. I don't mind too much, but let me know in the comments, is there anyone out there that really used the chalkboard? Apparently it was a way of seeing some kind of data metrics and visualizations, but in my head that was all the data hub, so I don't really know what the chalkboard was doing, so yeah, let me know in the comments, are you going to miss this? There is then something that I think is going to be a loss to the game, and that's create a club. Now, if you don't know, in Football Manager, if you want to, you can create a club and manage a team that doesn't exist. You know, you could create your school team in game if you wanted to, the same way you can do a similar thing on career mode in FIFA. And you know what? I think that going is sad, but they do say that not many people were playing it. Personally, I haven't done it for a number of years, but it was a cool feature. But what I do like is they're not saying that it's necessarily gone. They want to bring it back in the future with lots of changes and improvements. They want to improve the experience, and they don't think they can do that before FM25. So the best way to go about it is to remove it and focus on it in the future. That way they can really make this FM25 game really polished without features that aren't necessarily usable. Now, if Create a Club goes, it will be sad, but to bring it back down the line in a better function, I think is only a positive. With the new UI that they're bringing into the game and the new engine, I hope they can make it a lot more user-friendly when it comes to creating the club. So, you know what? If that's what they're going to do, I don't mind it too much. It will be sad to lose it, but like they say, not many players are using it, and it's not gone forever. They just want to make it better down the line. And it's a similar thing for Versus mode. They're saying that a very small portion of the audience use it. I know I never really did, and they're basically saying that down the line, they might try and improve it and make it better and bring it back. They're not necessarily sure when that will be, and they haven't started the redesign of it yet. So for the small minority of people that are playing Versus mode, they are going to lose it. But again, I don't mind it too much. If they're saying that it's not polished and it's not right for the new game, then don't bring it in. Let's make FM25, like they say, the start of something new for the next 20 years. Let's get it all right. They then talk about challenge mode, which is something that I haven't used in many a year in FM. It's something that's apparently currently on console, touch and mobile. I remember it when it was on the PC version. I actually don't know if it still is. I haven't seen it for a number of years, so I'd assume not. But there used to be like scenarios you could pick up where, say, you take over a team 20th of the Premier League in February and try and keep them up, or you have a challenge where you have to try and win the league with a team with only players under the age of 21, whatever it was. There were set challenges that you could jump into in game and give them a go. And to be honest, I think that's a great thing to have in the game, and I really hope they can bring it back in the future, which they say they want to do in 26 or 27. 27. They want to bring it back in a better format, and I'm all for that. Challenge mode I always found fun, and it's also a great way to get new players trying out saves that they might not, and allowing you to jump into a challenge that you might otherwise not see. Because to be honest, a lot of the time in FM, you build a super team, you end up winning the league, whether you start off in the 10th tier and work your way up or whatever it might be. Not many of us jump into a team that are 20th in the Prem in February and try and make the Great Escape and keep them up, but the challenge mode will allow you to do that, and I think that's a great thing to add to the game, hopefully down the line. So when it comes back, I'm very excited for it. Then there is the information about the fantasy draft, which basically says it won't be an FM25 at launch, but will come later down the line. They then say something that's quite interesting. Mid-cycle feature releases are something that will become more regular for the series moving forward. Now, there's two ways you could view this. Are they going to, hold some features back and bring them to us halfway down the line? Or is it going to be a case of we're getting bonus features that otherwise we would have had to wait a year for the next Football Manager game, which will be interesting to see how they do it. I mean, with Unity, like they do say, they are going to be able to make changes quicker to the game, so maybe that's one of the benefits of using Unity. But I do hope that it's not the case of they just hold something back for the mid-season update. I hope that that's just something new that wouldn't have made it for FM25 they can introduce later down the line, and that's what they want to do with Fantasy Draft. It won't be playable from day one of FM25, but down the line it will. And they also talk about how they want to make it an esport, and that they've partnered with FIFA E to have the esports World Cup of Football Manager with £100,000 on the line, which all seems great for the future of FM, almost validating it as a game that's going to be around for a while. It's an esport now. There is a World Cup of Football Manager, so make sure you guys get involved in that. I think you can sign up online somewhere. Maybe one of you will end up being the World Cup winner. So they're the things that are being taken away from the game, and to be honest, as much as people have kicked up a fuss about some of those aspects, like Sports Interactive say, or Miles says in this article, not many people were using these things, and it's not like they're writing them off forever. They just want to bring them back when it's right and when they can make it in the correct way, and I'm all for that. I want FM to be polished. I want it to be the perfect game, really, as hard as that might be. So for them to take something away that isn't quite right and work on it for the future, that's great, whether that's touchline shouts or game modes like the versus mode or the fantasy draft, whatever it might be. If they can get it right, I'm all for it. So I don't mind all of these things too much. As much as they are cuts to the game, I think it's still a positive. But after speaking about all the cuts and all the negative parts of FM25, they then get in to the good things that we can expect. Obviously, we know women's football, we know the Premier League licenses, but also the new UI. With Unity coming as a new engine, they've been able to change the menu system, and they're looking at a new tiles and cards function, which basically acts as almost you click into something to get more information. So you get given a snapshot in these tiles, and then you can click into them. For example, here's some information about the last 5 matches a team has had. You can then click into it, as you can see, and you'll then get more information. Just to note with all of this though, one thing that many people are overlooking is they do state many a time that this is not a game build. This is just like a design file, a concept, if you will, of how the game might look. This isn't necessarily the final version of what it will look like in Unity, but it's what they're aiming for, it's what they're designing, and what they're hoping to achieve, and I think this is pretty cool. I mean, I don't know how it's going to look in the grand aspect of a full screen of Football Manager, but the more simplified, the more gamey we can make FM look, I think it bodes well for the future. As much as some of us love the spreadsheet email system that FM basically is currently, we've all got to admit, for new players, it isn't the most appetizing thing, so I think for them to make it look a little bit more gamey and make more sense and be more user-friendly, I think that is only a good thing. As they say, this tile and card system they're introducing will reduce the volume of screens in game, making navigation easier without losing any detail. So we're not losing anything here, they're just making the UI refreshed, and that's exactly what you want to see for what they're saying is almost the rebirth of the series in FM25. We want to see these big changes, and maybe the biggest one is the change of the inbox, which will now be called the portal. Again, not a final game build, but this is a lot more of a functional way of playing FM. I think it makes a lot more sense. Again, I think it makes it look a lot more like a video game, as it should, all these years down the line. No longer will you have to wade through tons and tons of emails. You start in this portal, and then you can access everything you need from there. As you can see now, instead of getting emails, you have your agenda on the left-hand side about things that are happening through the day, and also your messages. So like they say, managers nowadays spend more time on their phones than they do their laptops, so they're trying to make the game look a similar way. Again, not a final build, but you know what? If this is how it's going to look, I'm all for it. I think Football Manager needs a change. I don't want it to stay forever. But again, this has been quite a controversial one. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you like it? Do you not? I'm quite a big fan, but I want to hear what you guys say. And before anybody comments it, because I know they will, a lot of people always think this is the case, I am in no way paid by Sports Interactive or told by Sports Interactive to say good things about the game. I have no contact with them at all. All of this is my own opinion, and if things were bad or I think something looked bad, I would say so. No, everything here I think bodes well for the future of FM. I like seeing it as a big change. In recent years, every time a new game comes out, people complain that the changes are so minor. I don't use a data hub, I don't need set pieces to change. Well, this is a big change now. This is something that will affect everyone, not just a new tile that you can go into should you want to, like the data hub. No, I mean, your inbox is going to be replaced by the portal. The UI is going to look completely different, and for all of these reasons, I think this is a positive change for Football Manager. And then they show what the game might look like in the match engine. Again, all very much just a design file, not necessarily how it's going to look perfectly when the game comes out, but I like the look of this. I've got no problem with it. All the information looks great in the right places, and you know what? If this is how it's going to look, I'd be very happy with that. Now, after that, they then say that there's a taste of things to come. They're going to give us some more information down the line, and more information about the FIFA eWorld Cup as well, and even some information about a Football Manager podcast that will be coming along. So anyway, that's everything we need to know about FM25 so far. A lot of people have seen the images of the new game, but maybe didn't hear about all the cuts they'll be making. So hopefully this brings you all up to speed. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.